Hey, welcome back to Pivot or Die. I'm Rebecca, and today I'm with Staci Gray, founder of Organize to Scale. She's helped over 50 businesses organize their business to scale. And yeah, we met at EOA. You were a mentor. Everyone was always so impressed and talking so highly about you. Especially when it comes to female entrepreneurs, I feel like your group was a hot ticket item. You were a mentor to our group. And I always just felt like you always carried yourself so well. And I've always just been really impressed with you. And I'm really happy that you were able to make it on today.
Yes, well, I don't know if I can live up to all those accolades, but thank you.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is challenging for females sometimes because it tends to be a male-dominated world, and we operate a lot in our masculine, like driving hard, pushing, forcing, setting targets, overriding our intuition and our bodies to achieve.
Yeah.
And what I always wanted to do was model an integration, like how you could do both, how you could achieve a high level of success in your business, but also not sacrifice the female intuition, which is our superpower.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like that's a perfect way to put it. You really walk the walk and talk the talk. Like you really are modeling what an aspirational avatar, I guess, of what all female entrepreneurs want to achieve. You've scaled your business into the multi-millions, correct?
Yes, a few.
Yeah.
And I've made a lot of money and I've lost a lot of money.
Right.
So I think that gives you a little bit of rootedness in realizing that your identity isn't just another zero in your bank account or even another business that you helped.
Yeah.
It's really creating from a space of I'm already enough, I'm already whole, and I'm doing this because I have something to offer that I feel like is valuable and I enjoy creating versus creating for an exchange.
Right. That's so smart. When it comes to scaling, what does that mean to you? And has that idea shifted for you and business owners since you've started this business?
I don't know if it's shifted, but I think scaling, it doesn't matter if you have a 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure business, whatever size you're at, it's just duplicating. All you're doing is duplicating. So when you're first starting your business, you're the person who's wearing all the hats, doing all of the things. And at some point you have to say, okay, of all of these things on my plate, what is the thing that I can get off of my plate the easiest, that is the most energetically draining to me? And then you get that thing off of your plate because you buy back your time. Dan Martell wrote a great book called Buy Back Your Time, which kind of models this. And then anybody can scale because if you can learn to duplicate yourself, then you're just continually up leveling. And the harder part is when you get to the point where you're actually really scaling, and then you have to get off of your plate the things that you're good at and you love to do. That's hard to do because you're like, but I want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can make a change where like, I don't want to scale any further than this because I'm having a joyful experience. And I think it's okay. I don't think you have to scale just to scale.
That's interesting, actually. So is there a point where, like, what do you kind of notice when you don't need to scale anymore? Or is there a point where you don't scale anymore? Is there a difference between, like, growing and scaling, I guess? Or
maybe. This is an interesting conversation. Let's have it.
Okay.
So I'm a growth-minded person. And I
Yeah.
think you are too. You wouldn't be an
Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's like the main disorder we have.
Yes.
You just have to always grow.
Yes. I don't know if it's a disorder.
It's a strength. I'm just joking. It's a strength. But it's just something that we're like compelled to continually improve and grow, I feel like, if you're an entrepreneur. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that even scaling, right? We say you can't organize and scale your business unless you organize and scale yourself. And so the entrepreneur, the leader of the organization, needs to be growth oriented. Growth is not necessarily, when we think of scaling, we think of duplicating. And when we think of duplicating, we think of being able to do more with less personal output.
Right.
So at some point, then you have to say, what can my growth be as a leader that isn't an exchange? And that growth becomes who you have to be as a leader. and you start hitting your own walls of control or perfectionism or wanting your hands in all the pots. And then you have to go inside and say, why am I doing this? Why do I feel so compelled to control everything? Control the narrative, control the team, control the margins, control the revenue, control the profit. And in some capacities, that is so needed inside of an organization. That's the structural side. But then you have the psychological side, which is who you have to become. And then you have to reflect and say, okay, I am now stifling the growth of the company because I'm not growing as a leader. And then the growth shifts to your evolution as a human versus your evolution in a practical, tactical way.
Do you think a big part of that is, because I find this happened for me anyway, personally, I felt like very personally attached to my business in terms of it being almost like my identity. So yeah, is that kind of what you're talking about? Okay.
Yes. And I've personally going through this too, because I had some shifts in my own business, pivot in my own business, and realizing, like, asking yourself the question, who am I if I don't work?
That's a really scary one. And that kind of was something we were all confronted with in the pandemic. Not everyone, some people really had a huge boom.
Yeah.
But for myself personally and many other business owners, it definitely flatlined for a period there. And it was very uncomfortable to sit there and be with myself instead of just constantly distracting myself with the next goal, the next event, the next, hurdle.
Yeah. And what did you discover about yourself in that lull?
It's a big question. I think I guess I just really noticed that I was sort of busy bodying myself in some areas that I didn't need to. So it forced me to kind of take a step back and go like, it was a time for self-reflection and pivoting and kind of reassessing what the next goal could be. But yeah, it definitely, like, I can see what you're talking about when you're just like, okay, what am I if I'm not working or like outputting? And how much is my self-worth connected to that? A lot of uncomfortable things like that I was confronted with, but it did really shift how my goals are built now. I'm not as ego driven as I once was. I was more like, I want to be the biggest, almost kind of a masculine thing. Like, I want to have this many employees and be bigger and hit this revenue number. And now I would say I'm a little bit more motivated by how much free time can I create and how can I make sure that I'm not like drained by the wrong clients? How can I qualify people more? So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can relate to all of that.
Yeah. Are you seeing that a lot with other entrepreneurs too from that period or trend that way?
I think when you reach a level of financial success, I see a lot of people confront what you're talking about because it's like you've already hit a milestone that you thought whether it was a revenue number or a number of clients or a number of team members, like you hit something and then you're like, okay, it didn't feel like I thought it was going to feel. And then you're like, well, what is the thing that is going to create that feeling I want, that feeling of success or that feeling of fulfillment or joy, free time, fun, play? What is going to create that? And in my personal experience, I've realized that it's nothing external. It doesn't matter if I have the perfect relationship, the perfect business, the perfect clients, the perfect travel schedule, the perfect free time schedule. It doesn't matter because if I don't have it internally from nothing, then I can't create it externally because our inner world creates our outer world.
I mean, it's interesting that you said even like not the perfect relationship because my mind kind of went to, how entrepreneurs not typically, but there's definitely a lot of them that can neglect their personal life or the fun time and all of that kind of stuff. But you're saying like even outside of all of that internally, so that's like quite spiritual, right?
Very spiritual.
Okay, yeah. So have you been spiritually driven since the beginning of your business, or is this something that
so I've always been spiritually driven in some capacity. but I think I am more rooted in my spirituality now than I've ever been. So I was raised very religious,
Okay.
which I think religion and spirituality are different.
Mm.
And so my religious experience kind of shied me away from a spiritual experience because of the legalism in that environment. And then I experienced a series of different crises in my life: relationship crisis, financial crisis, health crisis. My mother passed away right before the pandemic at 59 years old, so she was young. And I think that going through a lot of loss, I think you learn a lot about how you handle things.
Yeah.
And I think disappointment and loss and resentment are ways that we get hung up as leaders. Is, a team member's not doing what you want them to do, a client didn't perform, you get a bad review, an investment backfired. So many things can go sideways. And at some point you have to say, am I going to blame everything outside of me? Or am I going to say, is it something about who I am or how I'm showing up that is magnetizing or attracting or engineering this?
Yeah.
And when you go into that, which is really going deep into all of your fears, it's saying, well, what if I'm a loser? What if I'm an imposter? What if I never hit this goal that I thought I was going to hit? Am I okay with me? And that is only, like, I call it I call that journey kind of soldiering. And it's every soul has to do their own soldiering. Like, we're soul soldiers, and we have to figure out what our soul was here to do. And our soul is not like there's a God or a universe or a spirit. It's like, we all know when you feel alive or you feel dead. We know what that feels like. If we're passionate, energized, excited, joyful, expansive, and we also know what it feels like to be oppressed, drained, bitter, angry, blaming. Like, we know those polarities. And when you are operating in the joy, expansion, energy, you can feel that. And then what you create from there is like flowers and blooming, and everything is coming to you. And what you attract and magnetize when you're in that not attractive state is not so enjoyable. And we all know what that feels like.
It's frustrating though, because when you're not in that space, it's hard to get out of it. How do you navigate that? What's your tip to get out of?
Oh, this is a good question. I'm so happy you're asking it. So I coach people, and I've been asking myself that very question because most of my coaching was what I call the eyes open world. Like, this is how you build a funnel. This is how you build a system. This is how you build a team. This is how you build a KPI scorecard. This is how you run your team meetings. I was very practical, tactical. You need all of that, so I'm not negating the benefit of that. But the other side of it is like, how do you get a leader, an entrepreneur, to activate the joy, the expansion energy? And I think that a lot of what we do as leaders and entrepreneurs is we set a goal. We say, I will do whatever it takes to get there. Doesn't matter if I have to work 24 hours a day. Doesn't matter if I miss a birthday party or a kid's play date or a friend's outing. I will do whatever it takes to hit this goal. And so we self-sacrifice. But we don't even know we're doing it. And so if anyone is in that state, what I encourage people to do is just tonight, at the end of your day, ask yourself a couple of questions. Ask yourself, what will be fun for me tomorrow? What will bring me joy? And who will energize me? And then plan your tomorrow with all of those things. And start at the end of that day, tomorrow, plan your next day with all of those things. And you'll figure out what brings you joy. And then what brings you joy, you'll keep stacking it. And then soon your answers are going to be, oh, I want to write a book. Oh, I want to do a podcast. Oh, I want to create this business. Oh, I want to do, because we still are going to have that drive. It's just how we're doing it and the energy we're bringing to it will just shift. And then we'll start creating from a space of abundance versus a space of frustration or scarcity or worry that we're not enough unless we achieve that thing.
Is it, and when you're in that scarcity mindset, it feels like fear, right? If you're, if the fear is really high, how do you even think about planning your day without tackling that fear first and making that the main priority that you're constantly thinking about?
Okay, so this will be a little bit more spiritual. So I like to think of our worlds as like two worlds. So you have your, what I call your eyes closed world. So like what you're talking about is the fear. Nobody else can see this fear that you're talking about.
Right.
You're feeling it inside, but it's not outside of you. So you have your eyes closed world, and then you have your eyes open world, which is we're living in our eyes open world right here. But I'm bringing eyes closed energy into this eyes open world. So fear is in this eyes open, that you're making it, you're seeing it because of something in here. And your in here is saying that my husband won't accept me if I don't do this thing. My clients won't approve of me if I don't do this thing. My bank account will have a disaster if I don't do this thing. And so we're engineering all of these scenarios that have never, ever happened yet. But we're making them happen in our inner world. And so what I like to do is elevate above it. So if you were to zoom out of, like we're sitting here, but if you were to zoom out of it and look down on you having a conversation with me, this is a beautiful moment. There's nothing to be fearful of. There's nothing to be scared of. But we feel like it is because we feel like we have to be perfect.
Right.
And perfection is an illusion, just like control is an illusion. And if you could say the worst case scenario that you're making up in your inner world were to happen, would you be okay with you?
Right.
And when you can say, yes, I'm okay with me, even if everything happened that I'm worried about, then it kind of dissolves because there's nothing for you to do. Because there's not a real problem. It's just a problem in your head.
Right. Oh my God. This is why you got all that praise in EOA for being the best coach ever. Has there ever been anyone that you've, like, say a client that you've had to almost like fire, or who just wasn't able to take like the guidance that?
Yeah, I'll talk in general terms.
Yeah.
Because this is a human condition. This isn't anyone who's operating in what I call fear mode. All is fair in love and war in fear mode because you don't even know you're doing it. You don't know. Like the part of you, and I don't know the scientific sides of it, but the part of you that is afraid doesn't even know you're doing things out of fear. You're in survival mode. You're just you're playing whack-a-mole in your business. You're playing whack-a-mole in your life. You're just trying to tread water and stay above it. So there's no judgment or shame around it. And everyone has to go through that inner journey on their own. And there's divine timing. It's going to happen when it's going to happen, the way it's supposed to happen. And you could force, you could resist, you could cry, you could whine, you could blame, and it's still going to unfold how it's going to unfold. And so just get in the raft. And what I like to visualize is, my aunt actually gave me a further visualization for this, but that I'm going through life wrapped in a bubble of grace. And so my aunt, she says that she blows a bubble with her bubble gum and then just lets it pop all over her. And then she lives her life with like nothing is attaching to me. And if it does, I'm just going to take off that bubble gum at the end of the day and I'm good. And I think that when a client isn't quite ready, or an entrepreneur is not quite ready to flip the switch to have faith, and faith is not religious. My grandfather, he came over from the Philippines when he was 14 years old, built a company to take public. I recently asked him, like, what was the things that were most important for you in scaling your business? And he said, well, two things. You have to have trust and you have to have faith. And I think we all know the value of trust in relationships. So I'm going to focus on the faith side since that's a little bit more controversial. My grandfather's an atheist. So when I'm like, faith, like how what are you putting your faith in? And he's like, well, you just have to have faith that it's going to work out because you can't control everything. And we feel like we have to white knuckle it in order to make the success and the achievement. And people who are in white knuckling, clients or otherwise, are in white knuckling, you're operating in fear mode. And flipping the switch to faith mode is saying, things are going to come to me. Things are going to unfold. I have faith in my strategy. I have faith in my relationships. I have faith in my work ethic. I have faith in all of these things. And sometimes when work ethic, relationships, grit fail or willpower fail us, that's when we really get real faith, which is there's something beyond space, time, circumstance that has your back, that is holding you together, that is like rolling out the red carpet for you. And then as for us, we get to say, do I want to walk through that door? Does that feel good to me? Does that feel energizing? Or does it not? Yes, we can force ourselves to do things, but that just reinforces fear mode. I have to do this or else it won't happen. And that then, it's not a fair trade. You wake up with your 7-8 figure business and you're like, I sold my soul and I'm not happy.
Right.
And so you have to bring your soul with you while you're scaling. And that means you scale slower, it's a better process than scaling and selling your soul in the process.
That makes sense. I feel like it's maybe a generalization, but I feel like female entrepreneurs that I meet are more in this mindset. Do you find that too?
Yes, I think we're wired this way though.
Right.
I think women tend to be able to tap into the ethereal a little more naturally.
I think so too.
And men are really good at practical.
Right.
Like sometimes with me and my significant other, I'm like, you handle all the practical because it's easier for me if you deal with the eyes open world and you have that tough conversation. Not that I don't have them, I'm good at it, but I enjoy being in the fairy world because it's more peaceful for my energy.
Do you, and you work with both, obviously. Yes. You work with so many different clients. Have you ever, or what would be one of the most like challenging cases or even most like transformative cases that you've come across?
Well, challenging and transformative are
very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
So, challenging, and this is actually, I think this might be the first show I'm sharing this on. So,
yay. Exclusive.
So, the reason why I started my company was, or this particular one, Organized to Scale, was because my mom died. And before she died, she battled cancer for 5 years. And we had a portfolio of family businesses, and my dad was working 24/7. So he said, can you please come systematize the businesses and organize them to scale so that we can have time with my mother? And so I did that. And the whole intention of it was really to restore our dinner table, like be able to have everybody around the dinner table fully present.
Aw, that's awesome.
Because you guys could relate to this. Like when you're building a business, you have a gazillion tabs open in your brain. You're sitting across from somebody, you're looking at them, you're talking to them, and they're like, did you hear anything I said?
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, I'm sorry, can you say that again? And so it's like we're hurting the people that we care about. And we're saying we're building these businesses because I care about you. But what that person really wants is your presence.
Right.
And we're not able to give it to them because we feel like we have to have this financial success in order to be present. So it was all about restoring dinner tables. My clients are capital raisers, and I did 36 businesses in 36 months, $300 million raised. Wow. And then it came out afterwards that half of that was for a Ponzi scheme. I was devastated, like and I invested in it. I was completely devastated because my whole intention was to restore dinner tables. And I could have only imagined the conversations at dinner tables after people lost so much money in a deal.
Yeah.
And that was the point that I realized that you could organize and scale businesses, but unless you're organized as a leader, it's not going to be fruitful. It doesn't even, it may be fruitful in an eyes open world. Like, yes, you have more zeros in your bank account, but it's not fruitful over the long time horizon. And so that was super challenging for me to take a look at that and say, what types of clients do I want to work with? Mm-hmm. What are the people that really understand what they're building from a heart space? And my clients were victims of the Ponzi scheme just as much as I was a victim of the Ponzi scheme. But to think that people are out there determined to make you believe something that isn't true and do a really good job of doing that, mm-hmm. It makes you look at your systems and your processes. And even, as a female, like my intuition, mm-hmm. like, how did I not see this? How did I not?
It must have been very hurtful.
It was hurtful.
Yeah.
So that was challenging.
Yeah.
And then I think often, like even with it from a client perspective, the transformation really comes when somebody believes they can build something and they start taking action in the direction to prove to themselves that they can. And I think that's what I help people do, is make them realize that you have all of the ingredients inside of you already. You don't need another business coach. You don't need another course. You don't need another book. You don't need another camera. You don't need something else to create. What you need is to start proving to yourself you're that type of person, which going back to, plan to your tomorrow tonight, that is proving to yourself you're the type of person. And you stack that enough, you start building positive momentum. And that positive momentum is the transformation.
That's true. That's awesome. When it comes to yourself and your I guess, yeah, what are some of your boundaries or kind of rules that you set in place for yourself personally that help you thrive?
That's a really great question. And anybody listening should create their own life rules. Because it will be the thing that changes your life. And it's personal standards is really what you're saying, is I have personal standards that I will not violate. The first time I learned about life rules, this was in 2000, 10, 15 years ago. And I was invited to do this entrepreneurial camp in Lithuania. If anyone knows Sovereign
Really?
Man, cool. This guy named Simon Black, Sovereign Man, he does this entrepreneurial camp. And I was invited and I got to go and it was great. I actually went with my brother. And there was a man there, Craig Ballantyne, and he had these life rules. And he encouraged all of us to create life rules. And so during that time, I created them. And a few of them is I work out first thing in the morning. And my literal rule says I sleep 8 hours. I work out first thing in the morning when my willpower is the strongest. And it's because you can make one small win to yourself early in the day. And that is like, I'm a winner. I'm proving to myself I'm a winner. And then I have a bunch of other rules. One of them is my yes means yes and my no means no. And we don't have to over-explain. I think sometimes as women we feel like we have to explain.
Yeah.
And no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
My therapist used to tell me that if somebody asks me a question, text, email, phone, she's like, it's not a subpoena. And I'm like, you're right. It's not a subpoena. I'm not obligated to respond. I'm not obligated to explain. I'm not on trial. But in some ways we feel like it.
Oh my God, that was like the theme of my 20s, I feel like,
Yes.
was just like over explaining a no and trying to be polite about it and
Yes.
everything. And you don't have to be rude, but
Yeah.
like you said, you don't necessarily have to respond.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
One that might be helpful for your audience is when things don't go right, which happen often, especially in building a business. A team member says something, a client says something, a deal doesn't go through, an email is sent that shouldn't have been sent. We have that moment where we get triggered. We're frustrated, we're upset, we're angry. We're like, oh shit, like this is not good. And all of my skeletons in my closet are going to come out,
Yeah.
that type of feeling. So I have a process I call finding your truth in the trigger. And so you just got triggered, and it's about 8 or 9 questions that I go through, and I don't have them all memorized. They're written out somewhere. But it's like, what happened? What actually happened? What are the facts of what happened? Not the noise, not the narrative, but what are the facts of what happened? And then what are you making it mean about you? Because what happens is something will happen, and then we'll come up with a story. But if you can get to the facts, it's like, okay, that email was sent to the wrong people. I'm making it mean that I don't have good systems. I don't have good processes. I'm not good at hiring people. I put the wrong person in the wrong seat. I didn't have the right checks and balances. Okay, how much of that is really true? How much of it is still noise? And then you keep asking yourselves questions until you get to the very root of it, which is, I'm afraid I'm not enough. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. I'm afraid I'm going to ruin my reputation or my credibility. And then it's like, okay, what do you want to do about it? What is the most positive action you can take from this negative emotion? And then take that action. Because again, even in the crisis, you're proving to yourself that I am a person that makes self-honoring choices. No matter what happens, I will show up for me. I will show up for my business. I will show up for my team. I will show up for my standards, even when it's hard, even when it's messy. And that's the momentum builders that you can do over and over again as you're scaling a business. And even if you don't want to scale, just as you're building your life.
It's a beautiful way to turn like a failure in your mind into a success, really, and a superpower to be like, I can keep going in despite of that.
Yeah.
You must have a really strong, you have a very strong mind, like very strong tenacity in you. I can tell. That's a really lovely thing to leave everyone with too. But I did want to ask before we go, what is there anything that you're working on right now that you'd want to share with the audience? Anything that you're excited about?
So I'll actually share what I am really passionate about. And Talia, I think you know Talia.
Yeah.
She in a way is encouraging me to do it, and I coached her, and so it's like kind of coming full circle. But we reconnected, even though I'm not coaching any OA anymore right now, and I really feel passionate about bridging the gap between business and spirituality. And I think we talk a lot about visionary integrator.
Yeah.
And I built a lot of companies as an integrator. And then OTS was my first one I built as visionary, solo visionary. And integration is the secret. It literally is the secret. Because you have to integrate yourself as a human. And then you have to integrate that into your business, into your life, into your schedule, into your time. And I think this is an art. And I think people need to not just understand the science of it, but the art of it. And I really feel like I want to bring that into the business world. Is like you can listen to your intuition and build a company.
Yeah. Well, that's the only way to now. Well, for success. The integrator role typically in my mind is like process driven and like building and organizing structures and systems, I guess, a lot of like what you've been doing and helping businesses achieve. But that's really cool to integrate your soul into building your business too.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, I think you'd be really good at that, and I'm really excited to see what you achieve. I also think everybody should follow your podcast as well. You've been killing it. I've been loving seeing all of your posts and all of your golden nuggets of wisdom in your reels. And definitely check out Organized to Scale, everyone. And thanks for tuning in. Subscribe.